Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Transitioning Together Vocational Rehab workshop. Thank you for pivoting with me this week. I don't know if you just overheard that conversation, but I have had COVID all week and I am still testing positive, so I didn't think it was fair to have the workshop in person.
Gracias a
There
todos. Gracias a todos por estar en ese taller y por adaptarse también a la nueva versión de la reunión, ya que pues di positiva con el COVID, entonces vi más prudente hacer esta presentación, ese taller en vía Zoom. Bienvenidos sean todos al taller de Transicionando y Rehabilitación Vocacional.
As you can tell, we have Spanish translators or interpreters with us today. Julia and Lauren will be joining us, and there are two separate rooms for interpretation, an English room and a Spanish room. So if you go down below on your the bar below the screen, you'll see an interpretation icon, and please be sure to pick English or Spanish, and this will help the interpretation go smoothly.
Como se dieron cuenta, vamos a contar con el servicio de interpretación. Si son tan amables, abajo en la barrita, si ven el icono del mundo, ahí van a poder elegir, ya sea el inglés o español. Por favor, elijan español si es que requieren el servicio de interpretación. Gracias.
Again, my name is Maria Barber. I work for the Nevada Center for Excellence in Disabilities in the Family Navigation Network.
De nuevo, mi nombre es María Barber. Yo trabajo para el Centro de Excelencia para Discapacitados de Nevada en la organización Family Navigation Network.
Today, we're talking about vocational rehab, often referred to as Voc Rehab or VR. Voc Rehab offers many unique services to our community and has changed and evolved significantly over the years. Mechelle Merrill is with us today to share all of the ways that can serve our loved ones, as well as how we sign up for Voc Rehab. Before we get started, there are a few expectations. One of those is that Kamala is our moderator, and so she will be watching the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and she'll make sure that your question gets answered. Secondly, we all may have some past experiences with Voc Rehab, positive or negative. Either way, we're here to learn and gain an education from Mechelle. And feel free to ask any questions. This is an open forum. So that's the idea, is that we all leave with our questions answered. But the idea is not that we air our dirty laundry. So let's be respectful to Mechelle as she's taken her time to join us today. Now I would like to introduce Mechelle Merrill, who is, Mechelle, correct me if I'm wrong, the Deputy of Services? And
Deputy Administrator of Program.
There you go. Deputy Administrator of Programs with Voc Rehab. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I will switch over to my presentation. How about, do you see what I see? Thumbs up? Okay. So I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Mechelle Merrill. As Maria said, I am the Deputy Administrator of Voc Rehab Program. We are, I like to say we're little but mighty. We have about 150 staff total, but only about 50 of them are actually counselors who serve clients around our state. So little but mighty. So I'll start with, what is the purpose of vocational rehabilitation? Why are we here? Voc Rehab is a federally and state-funded program whose entire purpose, the only reason we are here, is to help people with disabilities find jobs. Jobs is how we are mostly measured. There are two bureaus within vocational rehabilitation, the Bureau of Vocational Rehabilitation itself and the Bureau of Services to Individuals who are blind or visually impaired. Those are the only two distinctions. Two bureaus, same process, same goal. They both work for the purpose of getting people with disabilities jobs, but one has staff specialized to serve individuals who are blind or visually impaired. So here's some statistics about Voc Rehab. Last year, we helped about 552 people get a job. We're still coming out of pandemic because if you think about the fact that most cases are open 2 to 3 years, you kind of have to fill the supply line to have people come out the other end successful. So we're still kind of crawling out of the hole that we all are from pandemic. The average wage of the people who we helped get jobs was $15.79. And we served, meaning all at once people in various stages of service, received 5,557 people. And right now, as I said, the average length of the case is 908 days, but averages are just averages. You're going to have some that happen much quicker and some that happen much longer. And we serve all disabilities. It's important to note that we, other than our services to the blind and visually impaired, which that must be the primary disability, but there may be a secondary disability. You may have a mental health disability or endocrine disability or whatever that is going on as the secondary, but we sort by primary disability. So if it's a blind or a visually impaired primary, it goes to that bureau. Everything else comes over to Voc Rehab, but we serve everybody. And people ask, is there an upper age limit to receive our services? And no, we will never say you are too old to work, because again, employment is our goal. Now, we recognize that at some point, people may not want to be seeking 40 hours a week full-time employment, and that's okay. We don't judge. We just accept the fact that employment is your goal to whatever length and extent you are able. But on the other hand, and probably more important to this population today, is when do we begin delivering services? We are allowed, because we get our funding from the federal government, and with the federal funding comes the federal rules, that we are allowed to serve individuals as young as age 14 in the delivery of pre-employment transition services. That's only a subset of services that Voc Rehab can provide. It's not everything. And I'll talk more about what pre-ETS, and I'll call it pre-ETS throughout the conversation, what that means, but it's a specific set of services just meant for transition youth. And we can start as young as 14, and I'll explain how that works. So what is the primary disability breakdown of the people that are served in Voc Rehab? Most recently, and I think this is, you might see a point or two fluctuation up or down in a population, but really this looks pretty much the same year over year, is the biggest population we serve is cognitive disability, followed by mental health, physical health, hearing impairment, and visual disability. So a lot of, it's not always what people think. People, when they think of Voc Rehab, they envision a person in a wheelchair, and that is not always what it is. I think important to this population today is, will our clients ever be placed in sub-minimum wage or sheltered settings? No, we do not place our clients into sheltered employment. Never have, never will. That's not allowed. We cannot count a person in sheltered setting as a closure, and we are measured on that. If someone wants to seek work in a sheltered setting, let's say that they know somebody who is in an environment like that, and they want to be there too, which is a common thing. People have friends, or they have family, or have heard good things, and there are good things, but they might come to us and say, but I want to do this. They must first apply to Voc Rehab by law, and if determined too disabled to work, They can be issued a 511 certificate, which is just a distinction, which enables them to choose sheltered employment outside of voc rehab, which basically means that the law says everybody should try employment first, if and only if employment is not the right choice for you, the right option. If you've tried, then you've made an informed choice to do something different. And I think that that word of an informed choice based out of experience or education, which is what we hope this is really key. But why? Why does this matter? And it matters because people with disabilities, and I know I am preaching to the choir, make up the nation's largest minority group, as well as the only group that any one of us could become a member of at any time. Because voc rehab serves people who not only are born with their disability, but it's life-acquired disabilities. People have accidents, people acquire disease, things that change them over the course of their lives, and all of that counts in the eyes of voc rehab as well. And because if you look at the statistics about people with disabilities, they don't make as much money, and more of them live in poverty compared to their non-disabled peers. So we are here to try to level the playing field. These stats are from the 2022 Cornell study, so they're about 2 years old. Things have gotten a little better. As you saw, the average per hour was over 15, not 13s. But so who are our customers in terms of when I am a voc rehab counselor, who do I work for? It's a combination of things. I would say that the 5,557 people who come to our program seeking employment, they're my customer, as well as the 588 employers who we've worked with who have employed our clients are my customer. And the 1,121 students across 63 schools that I've provided pre-employment transition services to are also my customer. So it's a very divided, but not in a bad way. There's just many facets of who I work for, I would say. And I definitely do feel that we work for the people. These are my customers. So ever since the Workforce Investment Act, and I'll call it the WIOA, in 2014, every student with a disability must receive 5 required pre-employment transition services. So if you are a student in a public school setting, you must be given the opportunity to benefit from these 5 things: instruction in self-advocacy, counseling and guidance, or training on self-advocacy skills. Because really we feel in voc rehab that self-advocacy is up there with like learning to read. It is the primary foundational thing that if you can't speak up for yourself, if you can't speak to your needs, how is the world ever going to know what you need? So we feel that's really, really important. The next one is workplace readiness. So it's things like GED prep testing, transportation training, social skills training, vocational adjustment training, driver's ed, job skills training, things like that. It's all of those things that a person needs to know to be ready to work, that the things we must learn before we go to a job. They must be given the opportunity for work-based learning. So things like internships or work experience placements, on the job trainings, going out to an employer's site, seeing what they do, either in person or virtually, so that you're making an informed decision about if it's something you're interested in or not. Career exploration assessments, things like psychological or person-centered planning, labor markets, job shadowing and virtual job shadow, which is an online tool that we provide to all school districts and all students with disabilities, so that kids can look and learn for themselves about what is out there that they're interested in and what they like. Because again, I'm going to keep saying these same themes: informed choice. We want students to have enough experiences, either virtually or in person, to come up with the conclusion of, I'd like to learn more about this thing. I'd like to try this career. It doesn't mean that they're not going to change. I mean, any adult will tell you we've all recycled through many different careers in our lives and things that we thought we wanted to do before we settled on the thing that we actually end up doing. And students with disabilities are no different. As I always say, everybody's got their crappy first job. And that's just, that's life. That's life for all of us. But we want them to hopefully have the opportunity to make those best informed decisions for themselves. And counseling on opportunities for enrollment in comprehensive transition or post-secondary education programs. So what that means is kids need to know what are their educational options after high school. Either they graduate or they age out, but what's next for me? Do I want to get a job, or do I want to go and seek more additional education? And if I want education, what are my choices? And so we give them counseling on that. I think it's really important, though, to talk about what is different about Voc Rehab and the experience with Voc Rehab compared to the high school setting and the experience that students and parents have in the educational setting. So when you're in high school, or actually your whole life of school, K-12, you are entitled to a free and appropriate public education. Entitled is the key word here. In Voc Rehab, you are not entitled to Voc Rehab. Not at all. Because in school, everybody's entitled to their free and appropriate public education. It doesn't matter color, creed, background, age, education, gender, identity, nothing. You are entitled to a free and appropriate public education. That is not the same in Voc Rehab. So let's talk about what is the difference between entitlement versus eligibility. Entitlement is having a right to something. Just simple as that. You have a right. Eligibility means you must satisfy certain conditions to receive something. So even if you are a person with a disability, you must be determined eligible for Voc Rehab. And eligibility is based on proof of disability and need for services. Even if you have a disability, you might need our services to get a job to be eligible. Well, you must need our services to be eligible. What I mean by that is that you could be a person, and let's not use a transition example, let's use an adult example. You might be a person who uses a wheelchair for whatever reason you do, and you come to me, but you have already received your bachelor's degree and you've got some history of work, but you'd like to seek Voc Rehab services. Am I able to look at that individual and say, you need my services to get a job? No, I'm not. Would it be nice? Probably, especially if you're asking me to help pay for your higher ed. And maybe I would if we can justify that. But it's that fine line we have to look at. Do you need our services to bridge a gap caused by disability? That's kind of the key. Everything in Voc Rehab, as I said, is about getting a job. But in school, your parents have a right to know everything. You are a minor and you are under your parents' or guardian's roof and or authority. And so they have a right to know everything because they want what's best for you. But in Voc Rehab, if you're over 18 and or your own guardian, we only share information about you if you give us permission to in writing. So a parent might call me and say, hey, my son Johnny is in your program and I want to know how he did in his assessment. Well, if Johnny is over the age of 18 and hasn't signed a release of information for his parents, I can't say a thing. And as parents, I know that makes you very angry because you're accustomed to the education setting where through whatever communication channels your school district used, Infinite Campus or whatever, you are accustomed to knowing everything, getting report cards, talking to the teachers, and knowing everything about your child's education. You are not entitled to anything about your child in Voc Rehab unless your child gives permission. We treat them as adults. They're over 18 and they have a right to define that, which I know is contentious, but that's why I'm hoping that we can talk about that today. We will not discuss your case with your parents or guardians without your permission. And in VR, your informed choices and decisions matter. Your high school is not if high school is not voluntary, Voc Rehab is. You got to go to high school unless you are given permission to drop out, right? But Voc Rehab, if you choose to come here, great. If you don't choose to come here, great. You are treated as an adult and you are allowed to make that choice.
Mechelle, the interpreters have asked if you could slow down just a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And we'll be changing interpreters in about 2 minutes, and at that point, we're going to need to change the channels again on the interpretation. It'll be just a slight interruption.
No problem. I'll slow down. I apologize.
I have a question in the chat on something you were just speaking to from Stephanie. Does any history of paid employment disqualify for services?
Not necessarily. It's hard to answer that in a bubble, but I would say that we would look at the disability and the impacts of the disability, and if they can still do what they did in that prior paid employment, and whether or not they are underemployed or their level of education. There's a lot of factors, but I'll just say I wouldn't think so.
Okay, I have personal experience with that, and I'd say it didn't disqualify in my personal experience, but I know it's case by case, right? Okay.
I appreciate you bringing up that point, Camilla, because everything is case by case. We must, we are mandated to, we must, and it's the right thing to look at every person as an individual. And just because I did something for somebody over here doesn't mean it'll be the same thing for this person over here, because their circumstances are personal and private. We don't share it, we don't compare it, and is what it is. So
Maria has her hand up. Yep.
So when it comes to mental health,
Uh-huh.
how, so I have a dear friend that was just asking me this, yesterday. She has one son, she has twins. One son has many diagnoses, many disabilities, and the other one is more mental health. So bipolar, ADHD, the list goes on and on. How does someone like him get support services, through Voc Rehab? What does the qualification for that look like? If
a
that does
mental health diagnosis?
Okay, so through a neuropsych, or they need to have,
Right.
that would be the qualification.
We will get there, but basically it's documentation of the disability by someone qualified to say the diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah,
But we'll
this
get
is this is Kamala. I have experience with that one too, because my child theirs is mental health. They have level 1 autism, ADHD, anxiety, suicide ideation, and it's the neuropsych report. And again, I'm sure it's case by case, and the other stuff that comes into play, like our income, what our income was and that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Right. So I will just round out this slide by saying, if you don't actively participate as a consumer in Voc Rehab, you won't be successful and your case will close. So, because as I said, we've got over 5,000, close to 6,000.
Tenemos como casi 5,000 a 6,000.
I don't know if the hand is for me or if it's about the interpretation.
I think we're trying
Karen,
to
yeah.
switch interpreters,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm not set up
Yeah.
as an interpreter yet.
But I'm the one who raised my hand, and I do
Yeah.
have a question about this slide.
Okay, hang on just a sec. Let's get our interpreters figured out, and then
Okay.
you can ask your question. So
Okay.
let us know when the interpreters have changed.
They have changed, and so you need to select
Okay.
again English or Spanish for your language to listen in.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Karen.
I just had a question about when you were talking about if a young adult is over 18, that you won't share information with their parents. What if their parents are also their legal guardians? Will you share information with legal guardians, or is
Not unless they sign a release of information.
what if you don't feel like they have the ability to understand what they're signing?
Well, in that case, we still have to fall back on the legal definition, and the federal government says that if a person is their own legal guardian and over the age of 18, I have to treat them as
But
a
they're not
capable
their
adult.
own. But what if they're over 18 but not their own legal guardian?
If they're over 18 and not their own legal guardian, then I would treat them like a minor, and I would work with the
That was
guardian.
my question.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, that's why we kind of say 18 and or your own legal guardian.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And this is Kamala again. I have experience with that too, because my child turned 18, but they are their own, we didn't do anything, guardianship or anything like that. And so they just signed the form because it was creating tremendous anxiety for them because there's, you do have to participate a lot, right? So there's a lot to it. And so they needed my assistance to relieve some of that anxiety.
Great, thank you.
And I think that the law is well intended because we've all heard the other side of this story where people who shouldn't be under guardianship, or people who should be given the ability to define their own futures have been held back by people and systems. So I think the law is as it's kind of rough. I admit it. The law is really clear cut. And I know that it's hard for families, but I think it comes from a well-intended place.
Mechelle, I have a question in the chat, but I'm gonna let you finish this slide and then I'll ask the question.
Okay, I'm done with this slide.
Okay, so Grace is asking the autism and ADHD diagnoses, do they fall under the mental health umbrella or somewhere different?
They may fall under cognitive or they may fall under mental health. It depends on how the practitioner who wrote the diagnosis treats it. That's why you'll see on that slide where I showed the two greatest populations, it's going to be in there.
And that's not going to really matter in terms of getting approval where it's categorized. That's just for your own internal numbers, right?
Correct. So let's talk about the Voc Rehab process itself and what you can expect as family and as the individual receiving the services. So to begin the process, if you haven't been in the world of Voc Rehab and probably since pandemic, then you probably don't know that Voc Rehab has changed a lot. The pandemic made us change a lot. And so we now do all of our applications on a website. So it's the address is up at the top left corner, www.vrnevada.nv.gov. And when you go there, this is the screen that you will see. It's deep with content. Voc Rehab has done a beautiful job of, I think, putting everything that you could possibly want to know about us on this website. There's tabs specifically for job seekers, employers, students and parents, educators, blind and visually impaired, news and success stories, and then about us. So all you have to do is hit that apply here button that's down here circled in red. And that'll take you to this page, which is all about applications. And it says, thank you for your interest. And if you're a person who's blind or visually impaired and need assistance in completing the application, call this phone number or email that person. And we have orientation videos that we ask that you watch because it'll really help you understand the program a little bit more. They look like this. They're just a little bit further down on that page. They have them in English. We have them with audio descriptions, Spanish, and ASL. So I think that should probably cover most people's needs to watch the video. And the video is, I think it's about 9 minutes. It's not terribly long. And it really sort of helps a person understand if they're in the right place, because the population that I'm speaking to today, or the loved ones of the population I'm speaking to today, is only 1%. It's only one part of the population we serve. We serve, adults who have been in a car wreck and can no longer do the job they used to do, and they've exhausted their workers' comp benefits. We see a lot of that. We see people who have a change in a disease status. Maybe they are now diabetic to the point where they can't work in the job that they used to have. And it's not a workers' comp issue. It's no one's fault. It's just what happened in their personal body. And so things have changed. So for a million reasons, people come to Voc Rehab. And so we try to have this video to explain what we do and what we don't do.
Hey, Mechelle, I just want to give a shout out to the website and the application process, because I used that for my child, and they were, homeschooled toward the end, so they weren't in the school system to get hooked up with VR. But yeah, we just went right to that website, filled it out. I mean, and you guys work fast. I mean, we were contacted within a couple of days to get that appointment set. I mean, I'm sure other people have different experiences, but yeah, that website's pretty slick. And then we do have a question in the chat about the videos. So are your videos audio described? And
Yes,
then
there
if-
is.
Okay.
The second one right here is audio described. There's 4 different versions of the same video: English, audio described, Spanish, and ASL with the interpreter forward. So I hope that helps. I
Thank
also
you.
want to mention too, that right here in the bottom right-hand corner, you see this little guy, the little blue and white guy. He is, you click on it, it gives you a drop-down menu. I didn't take a picture of it, but you can change a lot of things. You can change the font size, you can change the contrast, you can change the font itself. Some people read better with certain fonts. You can, it just gives you a lot of control over the way the website looks. The website is also available in the 5 most prevalent languages spoken in Nevada. We worked with the Nevada demographer to learn what were the top 5 languages in our state. And I'm going to try to remember: English, Spanish, mainland Chinese, Tagalog, and why am I losing the last one? I'd have to go look, but it's 5 most prevalent languages spoken in our state.
Okay, Michelle, and we have a question in the chat from Catherine, and her question is speaking to kiddos who are lower functioning and the cognitive appropriateness of your program. So do you have different levels of your program for the lower functioning kiddos?
It's not really like that because the federal government looks at it. Voc Rehab gets people jobs. So we always come back to that. So if a person, I guess we don't define that for the individual or their families. They have to define if their loved one is seeking employment and to what extent. We certainly have supports in our program to help people. We have job coaches, and we have supported employment services and extended services. So we have things built into our program to work with people who may have more challenges, but it's still the same program. So when you click on, when we went to the application and you would go down after the videos, you'd have to choose which application is the right one for you and your circumstances. So if you are an adult over the age of 18, not under a court-appointed guardianship of another person, you'd pick the English or Spanish, these top 2 ones. The center one is for applicants who are 18 years old, under 18 years old, and must have a parent or guardian's consent to apply. Because if you're under 18, you have to have your parent or guardian's consent to apply. So you would choose one of those. And then the last one is for individuals who are 18 or older, but are also under a guardianship. So that would be the one that they choose. Just to make it clear so we know who you are, and what your circumstances are before we get started. So we treat you appropriately. As I said, on that first main page, you have many different tabs to choose from, but the About Us tab has a link right there to our participant services and policy manual. And I think that that's important if the public wants to see what the rules are the Voc Rehab has to live by. Just so you know, we try to be really transparent. So let's talk about eligibility itself. How does it work? So after a person has applied for the program and had their first intake interview and we accept the application and get started, VR has 60 days to assess an applicant's eligibility for the services, unless the applicant and the counselor mutually agree to an extension of time. And that would be something like, let's say we tried to get your medical records, you sign a release, we try to get your medical records but your doctor, maybe your doctor retired and it's harder to get your records, and time is ticking by, and it's almost 60 days and we don't have your records yet. So we will ask you to agree to sign an extension. For reasons like that, we might ask you to sign an extension. You will also need to have a documented medical diagnosis from a qualified healthcare provider. And if it's not readily available, VR can facilitate an evaluation to obtain one. So let's just say that, trying to think of, and I don't think in this population that we're talking about today that there's ever going to be a time when a person didn't have their records, because we can use their school records as well, but records have to be pretty fresh. If a person comes to me and they're 26 and they don't have anything but their IEP, there's too much life in there in between. So we might need to get new records to see where you are today. The condition itself must create a significant challenge in preparing for, obtaining, or maintaining employment. So that's what I talked about before. You may have a disability, but if it's not creating an obstacle to you obtaining or maintaining employment, then you're not in the right place. You know, if you're just interested in going to school, that's what financial aid is for, to help a person fiscally go to school, not to seek voc rehab services, which really have a different purpose. Applicants must be a United States citizen or have authorization to work in the United States to receive voc rehab services. And this is a biggie in the transition world, because that is not the same under the IDEA, which is the laws that define the fair and appropriate public education. You don't have to be a citizen to go to school in the United States, but you do have to be a citizen to receive voc rehab. And I'll pause if there's any questions about that. Okay, and lastly, there must be an assumption that the individual themselves can benefit from voc rehab. This presumes that the services provided could help the person achieve their goals. So I think at that point, that's where the counseling and the guidance and really being honest with the individual, and if we have permission, being honest with their families or their support systems to make sure that their personal goals match the capabilities that they have, and that we're not setting them up for failure, because that in itself is not right to do either. You know, you want to, especially with young people, you want to give them some initial success so they can feel good about things and have that win under their belt so they keep going. I think it's important that we pick appropriate skills, or excuse me, appropriate goals so that they're attainable. It's not that I'm not saying kids shouldn't stretch. Kids should stretch, and we want to stretch with them, but we just have to make sure that they are in alignment.
Hi, Michelle. We have a question in the chat. Does the client's IEP transition goals and objectives shape what the client seeks from voc rehab?
No, nope. And that's a great question. And I'm sure that my saying no is surprising to every parent on here. And that's because, again, the system looks at it like this is what was it going on when you were a child. This was the conditions that defined your education and the goals that they set for you in your IEP. That was, and a lot of times the goals are to their time and duty specific. Like, you will be able to write a sentence containing 20 words by this date, you know, or you will be able to speak a sentence with this many words by this date. You know, they're very prescribed, and they really don't translate to the world of work, because your employer doesn't care about those things. So we have to reframe your IPE, which is your individualized plan for employment, with those goals that speak to what employers look for and what we need to do to help you be as ready as we can for employment. Now, if you yourself want to talk about those, or say, you know, I met this goal and I think it means this, absolutely we can, but one does not necessarily inform the other.
And Michelle, if we
Mich-
could just pause for a moment so we can change our translators, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask a question when we get our translators changed.
La pregunta dice Camila.
Are we good?
Are
Marcia?
are we good?
One moment.
Okay.
Un momentito.
Thank you for helping me with the chat, Camilla.
Okay, we've made the switch. You folks can, again,
Okay.
select English or Spanish for your translation.
Thank you. Let me do that and then I'll ask my question. There we go. Yes, you're welcome for monitoring the chat. That is my thing here, making sure everybody's questions get answered. But I wanted to say, I mean, if there's stuff in their IEP that's going to help them with employment, you can certainly bring that up, right, with your person at VR, like, but it's just not going to translate
Right.
directly over. And then we have a question in the chat from Dora Lee. Is the video that you said is AD, is it labeled as such? Because I don't hear it. Do I need to clarify that, or does that, is that understandable?
It's understandable.
Okay.
It is labeled as AD. There's the one that says audio descriptions. It's the second one from the left.
Okay. Okay, yeah, if it's not working for you, just let us know and we can follow up after the fact, after this, with
And it
that.
might have something to do with you being on a Zoom at the same time,
Yeah.
because you can't have audio in two places. Okay, so let's talk about what to expect through VR. There's a few slides here that will talk about that. Remember I said pre-employment transition services, I'm going to refer to it as PREETs. Those are the youngest set of services that Voc Rehab can provide. They start as young as the age of 14, and you do not have to be a VR client to receive them, because you may have these provided by your teacher, because it's in the IDEA as well. You may have them provided by Voc Rehab. A lot of times Voc Rehab will pay qualified professionals using a standardized curriculum to come into school settings to provide these 5 PREETs. And then that gets reported back to us and we report it to the feds, because we must report to the feds all of the pre-employment transition services that we provide to students with disabilities in the state. And it's, again, those 5 things. And so a student, we feel that these 5 things are what helps a student to be best prepared by the time they graduate to make some decisions going forward about their future. Do they want to go on to higher ed? Do they want to seek Voc Rehab? Do they, whatever their choices may be. We feel that the federal government feels that these 5 services will help them a lot. Then if a person does want to seek Voc Rehab services, there's the application. Anyone with a disability who wants to seek employment may apply for our services. I showed you the website. You select the apply here. It's 100% online. We communicate with you through email. And when we need your signature, we use DocuSign. You don't have to download any apps or any information. You just click it. It's very easy, and we have staff standing by email and phone if you have any trouble. Eligibility itself for the program must be determined within 60 days, as I mentioned. And you must be notified in writing once you've been determined eligible for Voc Rehab. So we still use snail mail, real paper letters, for things like that. You might also get an email, because we allow you to identify your communication preferences. And so we could email that, but we'll also send a physical letter. After that, after you've been made eligible, the next part would be to do some assessments. because the counselor will coordinate any assessments to help you and them determine what your aptitudes and interests are and help the client determine their goals. And that might mean medical or psychological assessments to help us get those diagnoses we talked about, or it might be an academic assessment to determine reading level, writing level, communication level, and style. Those are things that employers need to know. So, and that we need to know to make sure that you're working with an employer, or we help you work with an employer who understands your limitations and can, we together can build that bridge. After that, we have 90 days to determine what your individualized plan for employment. You have an IEP in school, you have an IPE in Voc Rehab. So we will look at the local labor market, earnings potential, and advancement opportunities. So a student might come to me and say, I want to be a video game designer. We get a lot of that. Every kid wants to design video games. And so we're going to look at, well, what's the local labor market for that? What's the advancement? What's the education required? What's that level required? The IP is going to cover all the services required to meet the goal, and it will include all the costs and who is responsible. So there'll be a list of the services, what it costs, and then who is responsible. Voc Rehab does use a sliding scale for financial participation. And depending upon, some people have very wealthy families and some people don't. So depending upon, and it's based on tax returns. So we will ask to see that. And we will determine your percentage of participation. I will say most people don't pay anything because the sliding scale goes to about 230% of poverty level before we expect you to pay anything. So most people don't pay anything. But if you are fortunate enough to come from a family of more significant means, you may be asked to participate to a certain percentage. And even if, let's say your family wins, the lottery and you've got all the money in the world, some things are still 100% free no matter what. Like you could still come to Voc Rehab, and though we might not pay for your education, we will give you free counseling and guidance. We will give you free assessments. We will help you make decisions. So we're still going to be there for you more than a person who was trying to do all these things and make these decisions and pay for it all on their own. So there is support. The plan itself must be signed by the counselor and the client. And if they are a minor or under someone's guardianship, it must be also signed by them, the parent or the guardian. And it has firm beginning and end dates, but it can be amended. So let's say that we're writing a plan for a 4-year degree at UNR. Great. It's say with all the pre-eds and all of the work up to it and going to school itself and everything and the job development at the end. Let's say it's a 5-year plan. It'll have a beginning and an end date. But let's say that, something changed in your family circumstances and you had to take 6 months off and suspend your plan for 6 months. We can move that out at the end to accommodate for that extra time. Services must be authorized in advance of the service. So using the example of a person going to college, people can't just say, hey, Voc Rehab, I'm signed up for UNR. Will you pay for it? It doesn't work that way. You must first be eligible, and UNR would have to be included in your plan, and it needs to be defined who's paying for what. And then we have to send authorization, which is like a purchase order, over to UNR to pay our part. If you go ahead and do it on your own, we are not responsible.
Hi, Michelle. This is Kamala. I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So if the client needs to take like a semester off for mental health or whatever reasons, is their case just paused, or would they have to reapply after?
It depends. If the person comes to their counselor and says, hey, this thing happened in my life and I think I need 6 months but I've already done so much work. I don't want to give up. I don't want a new counselor. I want to stay with you. Can we pause? Yes, we can. But it has to be born out of a conversation like that. And there's a formal status change in our system that we have to effect that holds and puts a freeze on things. All services will stop. And then when they're ready, they can come back. But if it keeps dragging on, if it goes to 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, and we haven't heard from them, we might close their case. Because remember, communication is really key.
Yes, thank you for that.
Sure. Again, authorized in advance, and we must use approved Voc Rehab and state of Nevada vendors. So if you want to do something, you want to go to Jim Bob's School of Veterinary Medicine, and Jim Bob is not registered with the state of Nevada to provide services, I can't pay for you to go to work with Jim Bob. The state of Nevada has very high standards for who they will do business with. Schools must be accredited and insured and licensed. And that's really for the protection of the students in Nevada. And so we can't just work with anybody. That's why it has to be included in the plan. And often the plan will include tuition, assistive technology, work clothes. Let's say you were going to go learn to be a plumber's apprentice or do an internship in plumbing. You're going to need some tools. You're going to need some work boots, some work clothes. That's normal stuff. We'll include, let's say you needed a bus pass or bus training because you don't know how to use the bus. And then you need a bus pass. We can work with that. Counseling and guidance to help you make all of these decisions and understand and make informed choices. Job development, coaching, individualized to your needs. So, maybe you're starting on an apprenticeship and you just need somebody there to help you get all that initial paperwork filled out because your disability manifests in that you're not great with paperwork. Okay, we can have a job coach that can come help you get through that part. And then the employer just will help them understand that, John learns much better, not in writing, in conversation or in pictures. So talk to me, show me, that's how I learn best. And so we can work with that.
Hi, Michelle. Got a few things in the chat here. Marcia just wanted to add a comment about the breaks, and she said her son was diagnosed with cancer, and that at that point they chose to just go ahead and close the case because you were talking about a years-long treatment. And let's see, Dora Lee, in the BEN program, BEN, why isn't there a limit for a person to run their business so there's equitable and equal opportunity? I know someone who have been there. I'm not sure what that is saying, but is that clear or do I need to ask for clarification?
I'm not talking about the BEN program today. What I'll explain is that Business Enterprise Nevada is one of the subset programs of our Bureau of Services to individuals who are blind or visually impaired. And it is a program through the Randolph-Shepard Act, which is very old, back from the 20s, that says that people who are blind or visually impaired and clients of Voc Rehab can benefit from, they call it priority of right, which means that state and federal buildings in our area, we can set up businesses that are food service or vending, run by, we call them operators, but they are our Voc Rehab clients who are in our blind services program, and we help them get set up in small entrepreneurial businesses. And so that is a subset of people. It's not a pre-employment transition service. It is not a transition service. This is more for our adult population who typically have some work experience already, because going from the high school setting to running your own business is not ideal. That's a more mature person typically. So I'm not really talking about the BEN program today, but that's the BEN program. If individuals have questions about the BEN program, I can add to the chat the individual they should talk to. And it's also on our website.
Thank you, Michelle. And just a reminder for myself and for you, the translator has asked that, or interpreter has asked that we slow down. I'm sorry, I know I was speaking fast. And then let's see, Stephanie and Summer, their questions I think kind of go together. So I'll do them one right after the other. Are there out-of-state colleges on the vendor list, like ones in the WUE program reciprocity? And then Summers, can you transfer between states? I'm assuming if it's something that our state doesn't offer, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, like what the client wants to pursue.
So I will answer it this way. There is no reciprocity between states. Each state's VR program is independent. And each state has the authority to interpret the federal laws in light of their state laws, because there's federal laws and state laws, and come up with the way their state presents their program. So just because somebody had a case in Washington State or Oregon or Utah, California, doesn't mean it is automatically the same in Nevada. So if you come from California and move to Las Vegas, you have to reapply. There is no reciprocity. You can have two cases open at once. You can be a client in California or a client in Nevada, but we have to be careful and we have to have releases of information to make sure that we are not providing duplicate services. That's in the federal guideline.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? So if you're a client here and you do go to another state, are you allowed to, and I guess you would be speaking to Nevada. So say you come here, you're a client in Washington State and you come here because they don't offer what you're good at or what you want to do. Are you allowed to sign up with the Voc Rehab here if you're coming here as a student? Are you considered a resident?
You mean so you're saying if Washington State sent you to Nevada to go to school,
Yeah.
you'd keep your case with Washington State because they kind of are
Okay.
the ones that are.
All right. So you
We're
would
investing in you. They
okay.
want the success.
All right. So flip that. So would you do the same thing? Would they stay a client of yours if they had to go to Washington State to complete whatever it is they're pursuing?
I'll
Does that
explain
make
it this way.
Okay.
Typically, if a person is seeking higher ed, post-secondary education, college, and they want to do something that either doesn't exist in our state, or which is hard to find because we've got everything, or more importantly, let's use the example of someone who is deaf or hard of hearing. If you are deaf or hard of hearing and depend upon American Sign Language as your primary method of communication, although there are interpreters and although some people can make it work at institutions in state, some people feel that they will get a better education if they go to Gallaudet, which is in Washington, D.C., which is the only, I believe it may be, there might be one other, but it's the one that we work with the most. All ASL instructed classes. And it's a population of individuals who are all ASL users. And I think anybody of one disability group can appreciate that when you are with others of your same disability in a learning environment, it is richer. And the program is tailored to your needs. So they specialize in degrees that are most work the best with ASL users so that they're setting them up for success. So that's a great example of when we would send somebody out of state. If a person wants to go to a school outside of Nevada, but that which they want to learn can be taught in Nevada, Nevada believes in keeping Nevada green, as they say, keeping our money in Nevada. So if you wanted to go to learn about mining engineering, let's say, and you wanted to go to Wyoming, who has a great school for it, I'm not going to pay to send you to Wyoming because UNR has an amazing school of mining engineering, if that makes sense. And if you really want to, I will only pay that which I would have paid for Nevada. You can pay the difference and take yourself out. So that's
Yes.
what those.
Yes,
combined
thank you for
relationships.
that clarification. You just hit on it perfectly there.
Great. Okay, so what to expect? Once all of the individualized plan for employment IPE services have been delivered to the individual, so they've learned how to ride the bus, they have graduated from whatever training they wanted to, or they have finished their apprenticeship, whatever, they're ready for a job. They're as ready as Voc Rehab can make them. Then we will start looking for a job. And we can provide internal paid job developers. So we have our own team of internal job developers, or we can pay professionals outside to work with our clients to help them find a job. The distinction will depend on oftentimes severity of disability and the needs of the client. And then once a person gets a job and has been working successfully for 90 days, so for 3 months, and their disability related needs have been met and they're humming along, we're going to close the case. We will send a letter notifying you, congratulations, John, you've been working for 90 days. We're going to close your case. If you ever need anything, you can always come back. This is something that we created so that people would have a visual representation of the process through Voc Rehab. Because again, we don't all learn the same way, and most of us are visual learners, if not two modality of learners. So from start to finish, there's 8 steps in Voc Rehab, and the process and application described below concern applicants with disabilities who are 18 or older and who are not under court-appointed guardianship of another. The process would still be the same if you were under guardianship. It's just that your guardian or parent would be taking this trip with you. So again, you start at step 1, which is day 1, and you apply and you watch an orientation. Step 2 is a rehab technician will contact you to do your pre-intake paperwork within 5 days. So that speaks to Camilla's experience. And then you will be scheduled for an intake with your counselor who you've been assigned to. Then you go to step 3. The counselor has 60 days to collect all proof of your disability and determine you eligible, unless you have an extension like we talked about. And then you have 90 days from eligibility to go into plan. So you and your counselor develop the plan, including all of the services needed to help you meet your goals. So step 5 is really the time spent, and it's all dependent upon you. How long is it going to take you to get from development of plan to job ready? If you're going to college for 4 years, it's going to be at least 4 years. If you're going to truck driving school, which is 6 to 8 weeks, it's going to be much shorter. It really just sort of depends on your personal goals. But once you are deemed job ready and all services have been delivered, you and your counselor or job developer will start working to help you get a job. Step 7 is we will post-employment services may be provided. So let's say you get a job. You're working, you wanted to be a chef, and so you're a transition student, so you're not qualified to be a chef, but you're probably qualified to, and you've worked yourself into a situation where you're a sous chef. You're working in support in a kitchen and you're learning, and you're really happy. That's great. If you find that you need something to continue your employment, a lot of jobs we know change depending upon management. So you got a new manager, a new supervisor, and somehow there's a new rule that pops up. You know, maybe they say you need to, they let you use the kitchen knives before, and now you must own your own roll of kitchen knives. Okay, that would be a post-employment, after employment service that Voc Rehab could provide to you to help you maintain that job. That's the time to ask for those things and receive those things. Step 8 is, okay, you've put together 90 days of consecutive employment without any interruption or need for post-employment services. You're working successfully, and we're going to close your case. Again, we're going to let you know, and we're going to remind you that, you know, most disabilities don't go away, or they wouldn't be called disabilities. They'd be called unfortunate things that happen. You know, broken legs happen. That's not a disability. It's an unfortunate thing that happened. It hurts. It's going to change your life for a while, but you're going to heal and you're going to get over it. A disability you don't get over. And so we say that so that we can say we've addressed all the disability related issues and you're working, and we're going to close your case. And if your disability worsens and you can't keep that job, come on back. Or if something changes, come on back.
Hey, Mechelle, I want to ask a question that something you said just triggered this question. And it's a question that we get from our clients at the Family Navigation Network. And it has to do with driving and drivers, paying for driver's education and some driving lessons. Can you speak to that as how it comes into play?
Sure. Again, because everything we do is motivated by employment and helping prepare a person to be employed. If they need to drive for their job, we will help them. If they don't need to drive for their job, let's say that they get a job and it's 2 blocks from their home, we're probably not going to do that. We're going to say, you know, that's a family thing. We're going to let you and your family deal with that. But if you want to become a long haul truck driver and that works with your disability and all of your needs, then yeah, we're going to pay for you to get that certificate, that license.
Does that also apply for if they're going to be driving to school themselves to school? Would
It may.
that would qualify? Okay.
It may. So let's say that you will use Northern Nevada as an example. Let's say that you live in out in Fernley, and you're going to UNR, and you're not ready or don't choose to live on campus. You're going to commute every day, but you need to learn to drive. Yes, we would help you with that. And again, it's easy for me to sit here not knowing the circumstances of the individual because everything is so personal, but at a very high level,
Right.
yes, it seems like we would in that example, but I'm going to defer and say, you're going to have to work with your counselor on that.
Right. Like everything is according to each specific client.
Exactly. Okay, so who provides the services? Because there's only 2 ways, either your counselor does it or somebody else does it. So the things that your counselor does would be counseling and guidance, helping you make decisions, helping you make informed choices, helping you understand options. They would also provide career exploration, individualized plan for employment, so helping you develop your plan. They will coordinate the payment of goods and services leading to employment. So if UNR is in your plan, they will coordinate the payment and send authorization up to UNR. And they will give you services to help you maintain your employment. Like I said, you know, you can't use the chef's knives anymore. You need your own. We will give you that service to maintain your job. What are the things that a vendor paid by Voc Rehab would do? Well, education and training for one thing. I'm not a university. I can't be a university, so I will pay the university. I'm not a job coach. I have staff who are, but if my internal team is either too busy, meaning they already have too many clients, or maybe because of your disability related needs, you need a specialized job coach or job developer, I can hire that out. I'm not a bus, so I can't take you to school, but I can pay for a bus, or I can pay for gas cards or driver training, things like that. Same with work clothing and uniforms. So that's kind of the distinction, is what can I do and what can't I do? The things I can't do, I will hire somebody to do. Or it'll be something that we work with you and your family to do.
Mechelle, we have a question in the chat, and this comes up a lot with our clients because Path to Independence is also part of NSAID, right? So Marcia's asking, do you pay for individuals to attend the Path to Independence program at UNR? And if anybody's not familiar with that, please just let us know in the chat and we'll pop in a link for that.
We do. We are probably the biggest collaborator with UNR on the path to independence. I myself have been on, I think, almost every single interview panel choosing the students. What we do in terms of it is, again, there's a sliding scale, and this is considered a pre-employment transition service, and we work with UNR. It's kind of complicated. We work with Washoe County. So if they are a Washoe County School District student, Washoe County can pay some of that funding because we'll pay the tuition and things, but Washoe County can also pay. So it's kind of a blended service. But I guess the easiest answer without going too deep is yes, we do work with the Path to Independence a lot. And we'll work with you as an individual to determine the cost to go there. So what are common VR services that you can expect? So medical, psychological, and other assessments to diagnose the disability for eligibility purposes. Things like counseling and guidance, bus passes, transportation assistance, bus training, tuition and fees, college, assistive technology. So let's say that this is an interesting one and probably one that matters. Let's say that you use an augmented communication device in high school. And that was paid for by the school district and you've used it for your time in school. When you graduate, they often don't let you take those devices with you. And so a person who has used this device, this ACD, as their voice, now they graduate and they have to leave their voice at school, which is, I guess it's just the way it is.
Hi,
So,
Mechelle. When you finish this thought on this topic, we're going to switch translators, just to let you know.
okay. So we can provide assistive technology. We won't provide what the school should provide while you're in school, in high school. That is the responsibility of the school district. But if you need a screen reader, or you need an ACD, or you need whatever it may be, we can provide assistive technology that you need to become employed. I'll pause.
And I'll wait for Julia to interpret that and then we will switch.
Yeah, and then give me the thumbs up when you're done because we have a question in the chat.
Okay, Lauren is set as an interpreter now. Please select your language. And we're ready to
Okay.
go.
Yeah, thank you. So Hannah, who is also a family navigator, has a question asking if Voc Rehab works with another one of our NSAID programs, the Nevada Assistive Resource Center.
I think we do to a certain degree. I believe that we work with them more for lending of equipment for students to try something and decide if it's the right thing. But typically we would buy it.
Yeah. And I just want to, and don't know, you'll probably point this out, but when you're using your services and you're attending a college, you also sign up with the college's Disability Resource Center. They kind of work in conjunction with one another, right? So you work with them with any accommodations that you may need.
Right.
Am I saying that right?
That is right. And it's a great point because once you or Voc Rehab on your behalf pays tuition for you to go to a school, a college, a university, they have a responsibility to you as a person with a disability to provide you accommodation. And we all know in the disability world that different places and different people interpret that responsibility differently. It's not always what we want it to be. And so sometimes Voc Rehab gets told, well, it might be our responsibility, but we can't do it. And so we end up doing it. Is it right? No, it's not right. Is it frustrating? Completely. I remember there was a college we were working with that their equipment to Braille school books was broken for years. So is it unfair? Absolutely. Do I have any control over it? No. So, you know, Voc Rehab will step in and do what we can to the best of our ability to try to bridge that gap. We will pay for job coaching and job development. We have our summer youth internship program, which is great for individuals 18 and older, which they are often still in high school, to have a 6-week paid internship, often in a state office, because we use our partners in the state of Nevada, and sometimes in private business. And that might mean the university, that might mean a lot of things, but it's any place that receives state funding, to take on an intern. And we try to match the intern's interests with what the agency does. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just big world experience, which is still valuable, but it's paid and it can go on a resume, which is very cool. We do summer camps, we do winter camps, we do interim session camps. If any of you are familiar with Amplify Life, we fund Amplify Life. We do camps because camps are an experience that students can have that teaches them about the world of work, shows them things so they can make informed choices about their future. That's the whole point. We have camps for students who are blind or visually impaired. We have camps for students who are deaf or hearing impaired, or hard of hearing. And they're great. Some of them are sleepaway camps. Some of them are not. Some are just day camps, but they're great experiences, and kids say that these are life changers for them. Many times they've never been away from home that long, and that's a big thing for an 18-year-old. It'll change the way they look at things, and that's pretty amazing. Driver education, health cards for employment, especially in Las Vegas. You need a health card if you want to work in food service. And let's be honest, most kids' first job is in food service because most of us started out there. My first job was a Baskin and Robbins. We do a lot of paying for interpreters, either it's all language, but it might be ASL, it might be foreign language, interpreters, and referrals to other services as needed, because there might be things that I just need to connect you with. You might not know about regional center services. I can't tell you how many kids we meet that are not yet. I mean, they are, from my perspective, completely qualified, but they don't know a thing about regional center. So we connect them with resources.
Mechelle, I just want to speak to that kind of a hybrid situation you talked about, where Washoe County pays for some things and then you pay for some things. And I had that experience with my child when they went to the TMCC dual credit program. So that's Washoe County. So they pay for the college credits, but they don't pay for the books.
Right.
So Voc Rehab then stepped in and paid for the books, gas money to get back and forth, because the bus doesn't even come where we're at. And yeah, so they just stepped in and picked up what was still needed.
Right. And that's that wraparound, that blending of services,
Yeah.
so that we're not duplicating anything that they should be doing. It's their responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Maria has a question.
This graphic on this slide is really helpful. I think it answers lots of questions people probably had. My one question would be, what if a family feels like their loved one needs a specific service, but VR doesn't feel like that's the case? How do you bridge a gap like that?
I think that we always try to solve things at the lowest level. So if, let's say I'm the counselor and you're the mom, and you and your child think your child needs something, and I really don't, I disagree with you. I'm going to tell you why. If you don't agree with me, then you can go talk to my supervisor. And at some point, it's going to rise to the level of, it's a decision and we're going to put it in writing. And anytime we put a decision in writing, a good or a bad, it's going to come with appeal rights, meaning that we tell you the process to appeal our decision. You might want the first tier, again, because we work in tiers. The first tier would be the Client Assistance Program, which is a federally funded grant that is given to an entity to provide ombudsmanship to Voc Rehab. And right now that is with the Nevada Disability Advocacy and Law Center, Kate Oste and team. And so they will come in and they will say, okay, Maria thinks that you should do this and you say you can't. Tell us why you can't. And I'll probably, hopefully, have a really good reason why I said no. And Kate will say, okay, Maria, do you see why? And you'll say, yeah, I get it. Or let's say I was completely wrong and I don't have a basis for it. I was wrong. And Kate will say, well, I don't see a law that says you can't do this, Mechelle. Okay, I see that. I get it. Okay. Or it's not against policy to do so. Okay. And I can be told that that would be in your best interest that I do it. I don't have to listen to Kate. I love Kate. I love Kate and I do listen to Kate, but they are a mediator, and the nature of mediation is either you care or you don't. We care a lot what our mediators say, and we have a good relationship with them. We respect their opinions greatly. But let's say that Kate said, no, what Maria's asking you for is not in your purview. You don't have to do it. We agree with you. And let's say you say, you know what? I still think you're all wrong, which you have every right to think. There's another level. You can go to an appeal at the state level, which is a binding decision done by the state's hearings division. So
how often does something like this happen? I was just asking, thinking, I bet parents are wondering this,
sure,
what
it's a great question. We have a council that meets quarterly, and in our council meetings, we always report out the number of CAP cases and fair hearings that we have in the prior quarter. I would say we probably get maybe 5 inquiries to CAP in a quarter out of the thousands and thousands of people we serve. And most of them don't go on to the level of a hearing. I would say in a calendar year, we probably have 0 to 3 fair hearings a year.
This is Kamala. I have a question in the chat, and then I want to follow up with that and say that I've had good experience with when I have had to question and go to a supervisor, it's been resolved. And it seems like it just might be that it's a newer person, maybe.
Yeah.
Just still getting used to the rules and regulations, and they just weren't fully informed, maybe. So that I love that suggestion of, if you disagree, then you just go, up to the supervisor and say, hey, this is what's going on.
I'll tell you 2 things about that. On our website, as I told you on that About Us tab, there is a staff employee directory. You can look up every single person and you can see their face. So if you don't remember their name, but you know their face, or you know their name, but and you can even look them up by title. Leadership, I'm on there, everybody's on there. So you can find the supervisors, you can find who serves which schools. And we do that so everything is transparent. We want you to find us. We want you to have the resources. And I will also say, and I'm reminding myself to speak slow. I will also say that in the pandemic, we, like everybody, rose to a almost 30% vacancy rate. And unlike many state agencies, when then Governor Sisolak said that only first responders and frontline staff needed to stay open, most state agencies closed. We were told to close, and our administration said, no, we will not close, because we felt it was wrong to abandon our clients. And though there probably wasn't as much we could do for them, we could check in with them. So I told my staff every month, at least monthly, you call somebody and you say, hello, how are you doing? What's going on? Let's just talk. Because at that point, nobody could help anybody. We were all scared to death, but talking.
Yeah, I
And
have to
so-
say the transparency is really, really good there. And and we did with my child, we did experience maybe something left from the pandemic because we lost our person that we had started with, and there was kind of a what's going on, and then some turnover with the next person. So yeah, we experienced a little bit of that, but definitely, once I started reaching out, I was like, what's going on? I mean, there was good transparency. And then so we have a couple of questions in the chat. Jana is asking, what is the main barrier that keeps a student from transitioning successfully from the school district to Voc Rehab and into either higher ed or the workforce outside of funding resources?
It's a great question. In my personal opinion, I think it's knowledge. I think that although, for example, Voc Rehab is supposed to be invited to every IEP meeting so that the student and their support system, family, guardians, whomever, are aware of Voc Rehab and can make that handoff, I would say we are invited to less than 10% of IEPs across the state. And although we are doing a better job through pre-eds of pushing into the school and telling resource classrooms and different teachers about us, there's still a lot of people who never know that we exist. So that's why something like this today is so important. That's why my website is so important, because we're under 211 for disability, for example. We try everything we can. We'll come to the opening of an envelope. We are so desperate to get the message out about our work, because I can't help what you don't know. If you can't find me, I can't help you. And
yeah,
so
it seems like we have many clients who are in this transition phase that come to Family Navigation Network who didn't think their child qualified, or whatever the reason. So it feels good to be able to let people know about something that will help their loved one, right? So yeah. Okay, we've got two more questions. The first one is from Stephanie, and she says, can you help a person who needs Chinese language interpretation? Or
yes.
could they, I guess, be a client?
Yes.
Right, and that probably, if you don't have it on staff, you hire somebody. That's one of those cases, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, and then from Luna,
And Chinese is one of the languages on our website.
okay, yeah. What if you can't find a job developer, or what if your job developer is not, is kind of slacking on what they need to be helping with? And is there a plan for the state of Nevada to contract with more job developers? It seems like there are not enough for our area, Reno, Sparks. And what should a family do if they cannot find one to work with? That's the end of that question. And I'll just add that, I did have a family navigation client up in Incline Village who was having a similar difficulty. So if you could speak to it locally and as we get into the rural areas, in case we have somebody that's in a more rural area.
Absolutely. It is one of the biggest challenges that we have, because I will be honest and say that the process to become a vendor to work for the state of Nevada, and remember, I can only pay those who are registered with the state as a vendor, is cumbersome and it's expensive on their part. They have to carry a lot of insurance, and a lot of these single proprietor mom and pop businesses, it's really hard for them. To try to attract more business, we have recently raised our rates that we pay for job development. Starting September 1st, they went up almost 30% across the board. So we're hoping that that will attract more people, recognizing that everything, groceries, gas, everything went up in the pandemic. So we have to pay our vendors better. So I'm hoping that's going to help. It's one of the things that's a frustration for us as well, because I have so little control over who chooses to work for the state of Nevada or work with as a vendor. So paying more is one of the only things I can do. I have my own internal team, and we end up depending upon them more and more and more. And these poor little people are just working themselves like crazy.
So this would be a case where you would not be able to, like, if the person didn't just go out and do it, but they said up front, this is the only person we can use in this area. I'm just going to have to pay for it. You wouldn't be able to reimburse the person after they paid for it on their own just because they had no one else they could use. Or does that get into?
The thing that's uncomfortable for me about that is oftentimes I can reimburse people for certain things if we are upfront and we agree in the plan that that's how it's going to go. I'm not always comfortable reimbursing for job development because, again, I have very high standards if I'm going to pay somebody to work with my clients and put them in that place of trust, to work with a person with a disability, to have the experience, the background, the education, and skill. And some person who has chosen not to sign up with my services, but they're willing to provide this service, calls into question to me, how legitimate are you?
Right. So it sounds like this is definitely going to be one of those things where there's lots of communication going on
Yes.
beforehand, not just doing it. Okay. And then we have a question in the chat.
Let me just say one more thing real quick.
Go ahead.
This is a touchy subject because if you think about it, let's say I'm representing a person with a disability. Maria, let's just pretend it's your daughter. Okay.
Yep.
I'm working with your daughter and it's time for job development, but I'm having trouble finding one who has space available to take her. Job development is ideally done. Oftentimes they're driving in cars together, going to a work site or going to an interview. It is done in private. They're probably behind a closed door, doing work together, building a resume, talking about goals. It's an opportunity for privacy, right? If I just hire somebody off the street that maybe Maria knows this person and they're comfortable with it, but they've not gone through the fingerprinting and the background check and they don't have the misconduct insurance. If anything went wrong with Maria's daughter, who's on the hook?
Thanks for that point of clarification. That I think that helps people understand that even deeper. Okay, so question from D. Christensen. Does Voc Rehab work with other disability resource services such as Sierra Resource Center in the Reno-Sparks area?
Absolutely, that's Sierra Regional. And that was my example earlier of resource sharing as one of the primary things that we do, is to make sure that if a family came to us and they were not enrolled in regional center services, but from what we can see, it seems like they would be qualified. They have not yet met their 23rd birthday, then heck yeah, we're going to refer them over there.
Okay, and then a follow-up question to what we were just talking about with the job developers. Do you have suggestions for a family who has not been paired with a job developer, and it's been going on for quite a long time, for a year, and they haven't, they're just kind of stuck? Do you have any suggestions on what they should do?
Yes, I think that
they are a client. Let me clarify that.
Right.
They are a client there.
I think that it sounds to me that there's got to be more to the story, and I understand a wait, but a year seems too long. So I think that there must be something I don't know going on, and the employee in me says, I'd like to talk to you about that another day. But I think the answer to that is go to that person's supervisor, and they can look into it and make sure that a ball wasn't dropped on our part, or there wasn't a piece of information missing, or an assessment that we needed to do. That just seems something's not right there.
Okay, yeah, so go to the supervisor and see if you can get clarification, and just keep going from that point forward till you get some clarification.
And I want to add that, like I said, in the worst part of the pandemic, we were at 30% vacancy rate, which meant that of my 50 people, whatever 30% of 50 is, I had that much turnover. And so this job really takes about 3 years to learn it. So the people that I hired back in 20 are just now getting probably good at what they do. So things have been challenging, to say the least. And every time I have a turnover with a new person, unless they have prior Voc Rehab experience and maybe they came from another state where they work, I'm starting from ground zero. So it's not a public apology, but it's perhaps an ask for public understanding that the pandemic hit us very hard.
Okay, so we're caught up on questions in the chat for now.
Okay. All right, so if you wanted to seek Voc Rehab services, where are Voc Rehab services? We have 13 offices across the state of Nevada. In the north, we're in Carson City, and we have 2 offices in Reno and 1 in Sparks. I hear that there's a new huge employment hub being built on Audie Boulevard for all of you who might care about that, and we'll be in that as well. If you are in rural Nevada, we have an office in Elko, we have an office in Winnemucca, we have one in Ely, and we have one in Fallon. And I'm told that there's a new one opening up in Fernley in the next few months. And if you are in Las Vegas, Clark County, we've got 1, 2 in central Las Vegas, 1 in Henderson, and 2 in North Las Vegas. Actually, no, 1 in North Las Vegas. That looks like a repeat. Sorry about that. So I wanted to explain for a moment about, well, actually, I want to go back and tell you one more thing. So if you apply online, which is how we apply, you're going to be matched based on where you live. So if you live in Fallon, they're going to put you with the Fallon counselor and you'll receive services there. But that doesn't mean that everything has to be done in person. Today is a great example of life is still happening and we have to pivot. And so we do a lot of virtual meetings with our clients. And I know that that's a stretch for some people, but it's healthy for people because so many jobs now are virtual or have a virtual component, and almost all interviews are applications submitted online. So it's just the way business is done now. So just wanted to mention that. So how is Voc Rehab funded?
I just wanted to say on that note that works, so for me, has worked seamlessly.
Great.
And especially if you're a parent who has all of these appointments going on, it actually decreases some of that for you.
Yeah.
Having the ability to do these online, it's been a blessing to have that and not have to another appointment to go physically to.
I think as we as a society come out of pandemic, I think that a lot of people don't agree with you, Camilla, and we are told a lot of people want all in person, so it's a mix. So how does Voc Rehab get its money? Every dollar that Voc Rehab has to spend on anything for a client is created by, we create a budget every 2 years because Nevada is a biannual legislative state. So every 2 years, we create a budget telling the governor and the legislature, first the governor, and then governor includes it in his budget or not, changes it, whatever he may do. And then it goes to the legislature to agree to it and give us the money. The money that they give us, that is the state general fund portion that comes to Voc Rehab. For every 21.3 cents, or for easier rounding, let's say a quarter, for every quarter that I get from the state of Nevada, I can go to the federal government and draw down 78.7% or 75 cents to make my dollar. It's a good ratio. A 3 to 1 is certainly a great ratio, but, and this is sometimes frustrating because with federal rules or federal money comes federal rules. And so a lot of times people will say, well, why do you do this or that? Because the feds make us. So there is that. Is there any questions about that?
We don't have any in the chat yet. I'll let you know if one comes up.
Okay. This is a little off topic, but I think really important, is that last year, about this time last year, in fact, maybe a month ago last year, August last year, we learned about an opportunity for grant funding from the federal government, something called the Disability Innovation Funds. that the federal government were offering grant opportunities to states to improve transition in their state. Each grant was it was around $10 million, and the states had to, it was very prescribed. It had to be very specific partners. Voc Rehab had to be a partner. The State Department of Ed in that state had to be a partner, and the state's Centers for Independent Living had to be a partner. There could be other partners as well, but those were the mandatory partners that had to collaborate and create an application. We in Nevada did write for this grant, and we asked and said, in our state, there's a lot of well-intended silos, but people don't understand how to connect the dots, and we don't know how to find each other. And so I envisioned something that was like a roadmap for students, and it would look like something a student would want to interact with, and it would give them a start and not necessarily a finish, but a start and a road with a future that they could go through the steps of and transition to whatever transition meant for them. And so we got the grant. We got $10 million in the state of Nevada, and we are developing a website. The landing page, this is what if you go to www.nevadatrip.nv.gov, you will see this. And this freeway sign in green and white, those are live links, and it will give you more information about the trip, who the partners are, and we have an advisory work group, which is made up of ours. Well, I think the requirement was 10%, but ours is 50% students and families of people with disabilities. People with disabilities themselves and their families or supports.
Mechelle, this is Kamala. We are going to switch interpreters when you finish this thought.
Okay.
Are we good to go, or you have more to say on that?
I can pause.
Okay. All right. So Marcia and guys, just let us know when we're ready to go again.
We should be good to go. Those of you, please select your language of choice, English or Spanish.
Thank you. So, the work group, the advisory work group for ours, as I said, only had to have 10%. We are at better than 50%. So we feel really good that this is being developed for people with disabilities by people with disabilities. These are the partners. If you click on that tab that said partners, it's going to be launched in every school district across the state. Every student with disabilities will be aware of it. It'll go online April 1st of 25. The pilot 3 districts are Humboldt, White Pine, and Carson City. Starting small to work out the kinks, and then we will roll it out in increments to the rest of the state. We're pretty proud of it. And that's about it. If anybody has any questions for me that you haven't already asked.
Okay, yeah, please put your questions in the chat. I'll make sure we get those answered.
That's where you can find me, and that's my boss.
I have a question that I think would just apply to some of our clients. When they're in the school system and they're having their IEP meetings and such, are they the ones that should say, hey, they're 14 or 15, can we bring in Voc Rehab, or does who initiates that?
I would say in a perfect world, their teacher would. In our world, if you want Voc Rehab there and it hasn't been offered, I think it's important to ask. I would also say that at 14 or 15, which is very pre-employment, because really, you can't really work legally till you're 16. So those 2 years are spent in pre-employment activities. Perhaps more important than even attending the IEP before the age of 16 would be making sure that that young person is getting the pre-employment transition services that they need, that Voc Rehab will provide for free.
Thank you, Mechelle. Does anybody have any final questions? Looks like we're wrapping up a little early, which is fine, but we're happy to also answer any more questions.
Did you guys were able to see my chat question? This is Darlie. I asked if the DD Council is part of the trip. If not, why not? And then if their meeting is open to the public. Thank you.
Yes, meetings are open to the public, and let me go back to that slide. They're not one of the partners that the State Independent Living Council is on the advisory work group. And they're one of the,
You do have Nevada PEP listed.
and Nevada PEP is on there. I
So
don't know.
the Nevada Governor's Council is not part of that. And when is their next meeting that week that public can participate? And is it on Zoom or is it going to be on that website that you provided? Mechelle, what is the address again? I can't see the screen.
It is www.nevadatrip.nv.gov.
TRIP.
TRIP.
Okay. Okay.
And the person to speak to about who are the partners would be Jennifer Kane. Do you know her, Dora?
Thank you.
This has nothing to do with that. I just want to let Maria and Marcia know that that question didn't show up in the chat. So I don't know what's going on with that, but just for another time for us to make, I don't know.
Thank you. Dora, Mechelle was asking if you know Jennifer Kane with the Nevada Department of Education.
Yes, I heard of her. Thank you.
Mechelle, should she reach out to Jennifer if she has any more questions like that, or is that not appropriate?
Oh, I would think so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Everybody, thank you so much. If you have any further questions that come up, you're welcome to email me or Mechelle or whomever, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered and sent to the right appropriate person to get the question answered. Marcia, do you have those end slides? We have a survey. We like to make sure that we're serving all of you well. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on that QR code and letting us know what we did well, what we could do better. We take those very seriously.
And just for clarification on the slide too, Maria, the large QR code in the center is for the survey. There's one up in the upper right for our upcoming webinar.
Yes, so we have one a month. On October 12th is transitioning to adult Medicaid. So whether your loved one has had Katie Beckett or not prior to the age of 19, this will answer all of the questions about that process, what it looks like, what the differences between the programs are, kind of changes to expect. So yeah, please join us for that. That will be in person because I should have, some immunity from COVID now.
Thank you, Mechelle.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. This was wonderful, full of just really useful information.
Great. And I hope you go look at our website. It's got more than I've told you.
Thank you.